Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of A Warrior Spirit, where we let the inner warrior shine their light. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Courtney Cote. Courtney and I have been friends on social media for quite a while. We've been in each other's sphere. Courtney is the founder of the Mom Circle, and she is someone that we spent a long time trying to set this interview up, and finally the stars aligned, and we were able to make it happen. So Courtney, thank you for joining me today, and pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daryl. I know it's an honor. I
Um,
yeah, vividly recall our first encounter, so it's pretty cool.
yeah, it's been a while in coming. This is going to be fun because a lot of the interviews that I've had, I kind of know the people on a little deeper level, so I know a little bit
Mhm.
more about them. But today, I'm going to get to learn a little bit about you, as does my audience. So it should be fun.
Awesome.
You're currently in Kentucky. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in New England. I was born and raised in New Hampshire, southern New Hampshire.
Okay.
hmm And
And
then
um, and then where did you go after you were able to leave New England?
I went to San Diego, California, my heaven on earth.
One extreme weather to another, for sure.
Yes, yes.
Did you go there for school or for a man or friend or
So I was the youngest on my sales team. I was in market data and analytics, and they needed to build out the West Coast, and I volunteered, and I was like, I'm out, I'm going. So my stepsister was out there for years. I absolutely fell in love with it when I was 16. We went to go watch one of her marathons and stopped in San Diego prior to Honolulu Marathon, and I just absolutely fell in love. And I'm like, I'll be back someday. So it
nice?
was just a time, yeah. So when that opportunity presented itself, I was like, I'm out. I'm going. I'm the youngest on the team. You guys all have families on the East Coast. Like, I'm going. So yeah, it was awesome.
How many in your family when you were growing up as a child?
Me, I'm an only child, independent.
Okay.
So
And
fascinating fact though, my parents did get divorced when I was one. I moved in with my stepmom and my dad, more or less, at two. And I was really, I think, still in diapers. She says I was still in diapers when my stepsisters and brothers went off to college. So she essentially would have had an empty nest, but then she took me in diapers. So
wow.
yeah, that's pretty wild.
And how was your childhood growing up in New England as a in a step house?
Yeah, chaotic, dysfunctional, tumultuous, uh, sad, but also very happy. I went back and forth with my mom and dad every other week. So I went to my mom's in the city, then I went to my dad's in the country, uh, Manchester, New Hampshire, and then Chester, New Hampshire. I had a best friend, Tommy, who I grew up with. I was a massive tomboy. I played sports. I got dirty, played with G.I. Joes. We'd hide in the bushes and soak like the neighbors with soak super soakers, And I mean, I was a free spirit in the country. So I really had a beautiful, I think, childhood there. I think the problem was in the city when I went with my mom, and it was just on the main road. I kind of felt like a POW in my own house. I was an only child, and I didn't have any friends. I couldn't go on bike rides because she was trying to keep me safe. So it was
Mhm.
like two extremes. I had like one beautiful like autonomy in the country, and then just like this very strict kind of like no autonomy in the city. But that's just because of where we lived, and my mother just wanted to keep me safe, right? So I see that now, but it was not easy growing up.
And how long did you live in that kind of duality?
Until I was 13, and I was able to finally at the legal age make the decision to go live with my father. And we sat down at the table with my mom and told her, hey, I love you, but I would like to go live with my father and kind of go to Pinkerton Academy, a private public school that would be a better springboard into college. So I played sports and would have been a better avenue in my perspective. Yeah. My mom and I had a lot of struggles growing up, and I just enjoyed the country much, much more.
Was that an easy transition then for you to just be at your father's? Was it kind of still, I imagine as a child having to quote unquote pick your parent, not
Yeah.
easy because kids love both of their parents regardless of the turmoil that's going on.
Mhm.
Um, so how was that transition?
That was a liberating experience because it was almost like for the first time in my life, it was our relationship. My mom and I, at that point in time, I think we really hit a like a tipping point. We had a breakthrough, and it was really, I'm sure, heartbreaking for her. However, for me, it was the first time I think in my life where she was like, I just want you to be happy. So if this is what it is, then that's what it is. And there was like no resistance. So that honestly for me was like a major breakthrough in our relationship. But I definitely feel still, there's some healing to do there because I think last year I called her and I said I never acknowledged that I abandoned you at that age. When my whole life I thought that she abandoned me.
Hmm.
So we had both felt like almost felt the same thing and have always wanted this like beautiful love and deep connection. But we both felt the same thing, but from a different angle. So I thought
Hmm.
that would be fascinating to come
And
across.
how many years in between the initial leaving of her home to
Mhm.
that call you just referenced?
Age 13 to age 40,
So good,
27 years.
27 years passed.
Yeah,
Um, was there just lack of connection as far as communication or just lack of communication in general
I
during
would
those
say
27 years?
nope. I mean, we were, I would say we were best friends. We had communication. As I grew older, we became closer. However, there was always like this underlying like undertow, if you
Hmm.
will. And I
Yeah.
I would get a little bit short with her, and I'm like, gosh, I love my mom. Like I want this extraordinary relationship. Like, what is that? And so, I mean, I just journeyed. I seeked and I continued in personal growth workshops and so forth. So yeah, I mean, it took a little while, but the communication was there. I think it was me awakening, me becoming conscious, me having my own children and going through my own healing and trauma, and then
Hmm.
having passion and empathy for her. And so it just allowed this new safe space of unconditional love and forgiveness, really.
So between 13 and moving to San Diego, obviously you're now growing up in a different world and a different environment.
Yeah.
Um, in a situation where you're actually, to your words, happier because you're having that, freedom of the country. Um, how did that play out as you transitioned into high school and then college?
Hmm. So I played sports. I mean, I remember at age 3, my stepmom's like, we're throwing you into gymnastics because she thought that would be a really great scapegoat, more or less, for me, right? Or coping mechanism. And it
Mhm.
actually really was, given the turmoil going back and forth. It just gave me like this structure and this thing to fall back on. So I mean, my whole life I've always had activity, which is a great mechanism to me. Movement is medicine. So my point is like through high school, I played soccer, basketball, softball, and then I had to choose one to go to college. So my dad's like, you got to choose one. So I chose softball. I was like, which one don't you run the most? I was like, softball. But then I was a catcher. I was a catcher in softball. And now I have all my gear on and I'm running hills. And I'm like, oh, this backfired really quickly. So
Yes.
yeah, so I feel like I thank God for sports, honestly, Daryl, because if I had $1 for every time someone said, wow, it's amazing how well you turned out, I mean, I think I'd be a millionaire, honestly. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I back to high school, my dad and my stepmom then got divorced, 15 years old. Uh, he moved out. She was going down to Massachusetts to be with her mom with Alzheimer's. So she had taken her car away. And so now here I'm 15, driving around with no license, picking up all my friends, going to parties. Um, I mean, I almost failed out of high school, like no joke. Uh, I mean, I struggled because it was just so, I was living with my stepmom and not even my mom or my dad. So it
Mm.
was really, I can't even go back there. It was so wild.
Let me
So,
ask you this because it's interesting. Why? I mean, you chose to live with your father,
mhm.
and then when that marriage failed, why did you stay with your stepmom instead of going with your father?
He didn't have a place for me. I mean, he just struggled. I think financially he was unstable. But then it wasn't too later on where he did find a place and I moved in with him. And so he did sacrifice and he was like, you know what, we're going to be here. And it wasn't the best, but he's like, at least you can go to the same school. And I was like, oh gosh, okay, I trust you.
Yeah,
Here we go. So it wasn't that long, but it was long enough where it was turmoil and
yeah.
more, yeah. So, but yeah, I did finish out, uh, I graduated and then I ended up going to Southern New Hampshire University and playing softball there. So I couldn't handle the winters. So that's when I just launched into San Diego. After that, I was like, get me out of here.
And you said you were the youngest on your sales team. What was that field?
Pharmaceuticals and
What
biotechnology,
what what field were you in? Oh
sales
wow.
there. Yeah. So I
That's
basically
that's
sold data. Yeah. We sold
yeah.
data to investment banks and venture capitalists. So
Okay. Well, that's quite a
yeah, I
eye-opening
thoroughly
experience.
enjoyed it. Yeah. That was also a really interesting, I would say just crazy, crazy moment because my dad was suicidal my whole life off and on. And I remember him being in Brockton Hospital, the VA. And it was when I was supposed to move out to California and I almost didn't go. And I just was like, I have to stay here for him. But then I'm like, well, what am I going to do for him? You know? And so it was just
Mhm.
a really pivotal time where I was like, I have to do this for myself and I have to go. So I did, but that was really hard because I felt like I was leaving him and abandoning him.
Yeah, because as a child, you already felt like you abandoned your mother, and now
Yep.
you're feeling like you're abandoning your father. It's a very, very tough choice to choose us first. I remember my father. I grew up in a very small town in Iowa, and I
Mhm.
remember I had an opportunity to move to a bigger city in Florida, and he encouraged me to move away. And then as he got older, I wanted to move back to kind of take care of him, and
Mm,
he absolutely said, "There is no life for you here. Don't
mm.
do this just because of me." And it's hard when we want to be there for our parents, and it's even harder than to choose ourselves. uh,
Absolutely.
so kudos to you for having the intuitive nature to choose yourself for a better life.
Yeah. Thank you.
um, how long were you in San Diego before you met your husband? I mean, you're a wife
Yeah.
and a mother and founder of a mom circle. I'm making presumptions about some things, but
Yes. So newly divorced, but let's see, 2008, I moved out to San Diego. Uh, I did Landmark. So I did the Landmark Forum. My dad and I were having some, I just, I think Daryl, for some reason, I think my childhood and like the relationships and where they were all at, I just was never okay with that. There was a burning desire within me that was just like, this is an extraordinary and I want extraordinary. And I just remember
mhm,
calling my dad and being like, Dad, like, I want an extraordinary relationship. And he hung up on, or no, oh, he said, our relationship is good enough. And I hung up the phone. I literally hung up on him and I didn't talk to him for a week. And that for some reason put a fire under his ass to like step into gear and be like, okay, I don't know what this means for you, but what does this mean and what should I do and what can we do? And so
mhm.
there was this Landmark Forum out in San Diego. That was like the starting point of my, I would say, well, it was like the second personal growth workshop that I had done. Um, but yeah, San Diego, for 3 years, I was out there building out the West Coast. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I felt at home. It was like I had been there before, like my spirit
Mhm.
had been before. I'm like, this feels good. This is comfortable.
Yeah.
Uh, it was peaceful. I was at like total bliss. And yeah, and then I remember my best friend coming out to San Diego, and I was like, I am never doing never dating military, never doing a long distance relationship. And then 2 weeks later, I was like thoroughly immersed in a military long distance relationship. I was like, how does this happen? Like, never say never.
Yeah.
So yeah, he Navy helicopter pilot. I ended up I just I dove in head first. I moved to Texas where he was. And I was like, you know what, I'm not going to do a long distance relationship for 2 years and that not be, I don't know, up to par, like what I want. Right. I'm like, let's just dive in head first and qualify this early. And so, yeah, I mean, I moved in, it was a sprint, Daryl, it was a sprint. We ended up going to Paris. He proposed on top of the Eiffel Tower. Like 6 months later, after I moved in, we conceived. We actually married in Texas with a JP, then moved back to San Diego, had a big celebration with the family. But it was hard. I'm not going to lie. Like, military was tough because he got out of the military, went to Apple, which was beautiful, like got a springboard right into a beautiful, like, Fortune 500, one of the FANG companies. So we moved up to San Jose. And I think that's where a lot of my struggles, I think, just becoming a mom and moving and getting out of my like heaven on earth was really, I was situationally depressed. I remember going to therapy and they're like, you're not clinically depressed, but you're situationally depressed. And I'm like, yeah, I'm isolated. I have no friends. I'm home with the baby. I'm working from home. And I just didn't have any outlets. I wasn't getting any type like connection, or I was totally isolated.
Which is very interesting because from the outside perspective, you would say, man, Courtney has that extraordinary life that she wanted, Paris and mom and, wife and, San Jose isn't a shabby place, Um, and
Yeah.
then if you dive deeper, there's still that underlying brokenness inside. I don't want to say broken, trauma inside
Yeah.
that's surfacing in other ways
Hmm.
to make the sadness more prominent.
Yeah.
How did you work your way out of that?
Okay. So he then deploys to Afghanistan for a year. Trump went into house and put all the reservists back in Afghanistan. So he actually wasn't even active. He was reserves. And so left for a year. And I was like, well, the kids are whining, literally. So mom was whining. I mean, I drank way more than I should have that year. No joke. I mean, I drank enough that year to last me an entire lifetime. So someone had given me CBD,
Hmm.
cannabis and CBD now. They're like,
Hmm.
because I was opening up and just like, I was a mess. It was hard. I mean, there was no support and I had no family out there. So I was doing it all by myself, working, taking care of the kids, like holding up the fort, I mean, it was a lot. And someone had given me CBD and I took that like a tincture,
Hmm.
and it calmed my entire like central nervous system. So that ended up leading me from out of pharma biotech. And then I jumped into CBD and cannabis because it was wondrous for my body. So it
Hmm.
took that edge off where I didn't need to drink anymore.
Hmm.
So getting out of that, we ended up moving to Kentucky because that's a long story in itself. But now we're in Lexington, Kentucky. And I just did COVID happened right away. And I jumped into, I mean, I was straddling my marriage for a little while. Like, should I stay? Should I go? I mean, there was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of internal trauma that had completely boiled to the surface in my marriage because of the ways of which our dynamic was. Having kids, like just the marriage. I mean, I tell him he's my biggest gift now because I wouldn't be where I am today and I wouldn't know all about me if it weren't for the
Hmm.
trigger activated of trauma for me.
Hmm.
So anyway, this making relationships work course I joined, uh, I was like, is it me? Like, I'm not going to throw in the towel if there's something else that I can do. And so then I jumped into Tony Robbins and I did You Unleash the Power Within and Date with Destiny. And I mean,
Hmm.
all like literally invested in myself for a solid 2 years.
Mhm.
I left CBD, left corporate. I founded my own consulting company. I mean, I just dove in headfirst to seeking and finding the answers. It was painful. It was very painful. I struggled with anxiety. I had anxiety attacks. We'd gotten in an accident. Got whiplash from from behind. I was dropping down to get a toy for one of the girls. And 2 seconds later, we got like completely hit from behind. So I got whiplash. So I think honestly, that just slowed me down. I mean, I've been type A personality for my whole life, getting into an
Mhm.
accident, moving to Kentucky, having COVID, being landlocked, no beach. I've had my beach my whole life. Yeah. Like
Mhm.
whether it's East Coast, California, or Corpus Christi, Texas. I mean, I've always been at the beach. So now I'm soul stifled. COVID, everything happens. Then my dad passes in January of 2022. Like there was just so much that I had to go within, and I had to be the peace, and I had to find that peace within the external chaos. So I just had to find the answers. And through that journey, I did find the peace and the love and the forgiveness and the compassion. And I mean, now I live and breathe those values. So my dad instilled those in me at such a young age that to live those every day it's my new identity. So
How many
it's a
children?
two
How many
girls,
people? Two.
seven, 7 and 9, second grade and fourth grade.
Nice. Just curious, when you're alone, young, vibrant, outgoing, it's
Mm,
normal for others to be attracted to that.
mhm.
Was it, and your husband is, away for a year, not even down the street, but like away. Was
Yeah.
it difficult in that loneliness, to stay in your faithfulness to that relationship?
Yeah. I mean, he was deployed. I I was so busy. I had 3 jobs. I mean,
Hmm.
really, I really did. There was no time for anything else. So yeah, I mean, I respected him being away in the military, and I truly, I was trying to survive, literally. So,
So as you're jumping into Tony Robbins, and I'm certified in John Maxwell, and I've studied personal development for 40 years, so I'm aware of that path and that journey. Um, And you mentioned that you felt like you'd been in San Diego before, which to me means that somewhere you had been
mhm.
in there before. So you have this spiritual awakening, you have this inner turmoil, and now you have someone that you've immersed into as dynamic as Tony Robbins. How does that flip your script?
Hmm. In what aspect?
You went from
There's so many.
all this chaos and turmoil, and now you're doing the inner work, and you're aligning with,
Mm,
personal development guru. You
yeah.
know, how does that play into changing the dynamic within?
Mm. So for me, I think the two biggest things that I learned were gratitude. I mean, my dad instilled gratitude in me at such a young age, and I would have to go to my room and write an essay on gratitude. If I was like, it's basically my groundation, I call it. I was grounded so much, I ended up like terming I called it groundation. I'm like, I'm on groundation. Uh, so I would go to my room and write a 500-word essay on gratitude. I'd go through the encyclopedias, the dictionary, right? So like it was so ingrained in my brain, which I truly value today. But I was always cynical when I got into my adulthood, like, oh, I'm grateful for this and I have to be grateful for that. And it was almost like I had to be. So once Tony Robbins literally came into my life, and I did that priming exercise,
Hmm.
and we hands over your heart, and you see all the things you're really truly grateful for, and you're proud of those moments, and you actually get there and you feel it again. That was like game changing for me, to actually feel it at the cellular level. So I could be so down or sad right now, but to go in and to relive my girls being born, or to like relive my dad walking me down the aisle. right? To like go there. I'm like, I just go there and that happiness and those feelings and that those beautiful memories are right here and right now. I don't have to go and achieve that next thing to get there and to feel those things. They're already within. And so when I felt that next step of gratitude, that was like lights out, game changing. So I think gratitude and fear can't simultaneously exist. So
Right.
gratitude trumps fear. Gratitude trumps literally anything. So I just when I learned and like experienced that other um just basically that whole thing, it was, I do it almost every single day. If I don't do it, I'm not the same person. But when I set my life up that way, when I literally my morning rituals, the magical morning routine, I mean, gratitude
Yep.
is, I wake up and I'm grateful and I'm like, what am I grateful for today? And I woke up with my breath, and I mean, I literally just go there. Excuse me, my girls are healthy, right? Like I have so much to be grateful for, and it sets the stage for the rest of my day. And then I go to bed in that same state. And then that literally, like, I think you wake up in the same state that you go to bed in. So
Hmm.
to have
Hmm.
both of these is so cool. And like, you can be grateful for the smallest thing or be grateful for the massive biggest thing and everything in between, the whole spectrum.
Well, there's also a difference between being grateful because you have to, as
Yes.
part of some ritual you have to go through, versus
Yes.
actually being grateful and living it internally.
Yes.
And there's a huge difference between when you're grounded in your room, having to write out the word
Right.
gratitude and actually embodying it in your
Yeah.
heart.
Correct. Which is why with my girls now, I know that I went through the motions and I never had that experience of truly feeling it. And so for dinner now, we all hold hands and we talk about something that we are truly grateful for. And last night we were so excited to have sushi. The girls were like, I'm grateful for sushi. Scar was like, me too. I'm like, me too, let's eat. And it was so easy and so quick to be grateful for sushi. But some days it's, or some meals and dinners when we sit down, we talk about something for 5 minutes and then our food's cold and we're like, well, at least we have food, right? So
Yeah.
we get so into it. So I really enjoy that. Gratitude is massive. So that's the one piece from Tony Robbins that has literally changed my life. And then the other one is change your story, change your life, change
Hmm.
your change your life. And
Hmm.
so when we can just take away those negative stories and those beliefs, like my father was suicidal at age 8. He went in for 30 days inpatient at Hampstead Hospital, New Hampshire. And from then on, he was suicidal my whole life off and on. And so I think that my story growing up, because he was a Marine and I was grown up, tough love, I thought I wasn't loved. Like I really thought my dad didn't love me. I mean, that was my story. But at the end of the day, he absolutely admired and cherished me and loved me to death, like literally. And when he was at the last days, the last weeks. And then even afterwards, people telling me like every time your dad talked about you, he had a sparkle in his eye, right? He was always so proud and he always loved you so much. And so I think it was just, I'm sad that that was my story growing up and that I missed us for a little while.
Hmm.
So what, change your story, change your life. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying to someone yesterday, you can never be the victor in your story if you're always the victim.
Mm-hmm.
And and what you went through does not define who you are, but how you
Mm-hmm.
react to it will. And you have to really, when you are able to tell your story and it no longer inflicts pain on you, then you've recovered from it. And that's when
Absolutely.
you can really have impact in telling your story. Because when you tell your story from the victim mentality, everybody has a story and no one can relate to, oh, your pain's worse than my pain. But
Yeah.
when you come to it from the place of victory and overcoming, now people want to lean in and go, well, how'd you do that? Like,
Yeah. Correct.
we had similar pain. How did you recover from that? How did, then you can really
Yeah.
impact your message. And is that theory or that thought process what led you to start the Mom Circle?
Mm. Yes. I mean, when you go through the mud, right, and you come out the other side, It's, or the butterfly. I mean, the butterfly cliche example, right? You're this caterpillar and you actually literally die and turn to goo and metamorphosis and come out in this beautiful butterfly. Now you can fly everywhere and anywhere. And you're so much lighter. I mean, that I want to teach, right? That's what I want to help guide and help these moms go from like this isolated place to this beautiful, safe, virtual sanctuary, right? So I did have two moms, one best friend from pharma biotech and another mom from college. And both moms had 16-year-old daughters that were impatient and suicidal, and they didn't have anyone. So this was years ago. As I'm talking to them last year about my placemats and everything else, I realized that they both didn't have anyone for support. Like, they didn't have a therapist that they were going to. They didn't have anyone to lean on. They only were so dedicated to their daughters having therapists and their daughters' therapy. And they were shameful and guilty about how their daughters were both like suicidal, that they almost thought it was their fault. They were shameful. And so they almost didn't even want to tell anyone. So when I both heard their stories, I'm like, oh my gosh, they need a platform. Like, I need to create this bridge and an alliance of some sort, bring them together. And so that's when I more or less, yes, found the mom circle. My mom joined. I had a really special person, licensed mental health counselor, who also joined. And it morphed into my mom and I doing therapy. Like, we just role played and talked about our story so casually, so authentically, so organically. This all crazily morphed, that now both of these moms have completely turned their relationships around with their daughters. One was estranged for 6 months because the daughter moved in with the dad. And after the conversation with my mom and I, and after us doing like the heavy lifting and showing them our old patterns and what we've now created, they were able to find that like almost courage and inspiration to text the daughter and say, hey, I love you unconditionally. There's nothing you need to do or be in order to earn my love. I've always just wanted you happy. If you ever need me, I'm here. And a week later, the daughter wrote back, I'm so sorry. And then they went to dinner and they had like a 2-hour meal. And then they just went to a 3-day like hike in a hotel for Martin Luther King Day just this past weekend. So like, they have completely like rekindled, and they have now just massive deep love and connection, which is so beautiful.
Well, the experience that I've seen, in my lifetime with my family and friends and just watching human nature, there's a period of time where the mother-daughter connection is really tight, really great. And then they enter into those preteen, teen years, and it gets very tumultuous, very hard. And then they go from, their mid-20s to starting to realize, oh, mom wasn't as bad as I thought she was. And then it reconnects to that loving, beautiful. So even on a good household, and I put good in quotes, even on a good household, that trajectory seems to play out a lot.
Yeah.
So in these tumultuous households, I imagine that it's magnified, even harder. So, but you bring experience from, your own, relationship with two moms, your mom and your stepmom, and having to
Yeah.
move in, so you bring this unique perspective that you can actually help these women get through. What's the one message that you start with to get them to start walking on that bridge?
How is life going to look like in 5-10 years from now if things stay the same? And honestly, there's so much disconnection, I think, with parents and their children, that the mother finds it within to say, you're right, like, I need to do some changes. I need to be the leader in this family, or this, we are the nurturers, we are the caretakers by default, more or less. And I think it just starts with, those emotional consequences, honestly. And I hate to go to suicide, but the stats are climbing exponentially. And post COVID, I don't even know if we've skimmed the surface of, where this is going. But I truly deeply feel in my heart that, as moms learn all about ourselves, and we kind of put our, I guess, ego, but disperse the egos, because we can't get rid of it, but like disperse it a little bit so it's not leading, and really wake into the heart and the love and the experience that we are solely just these spirits, and there's no hierarchical approach. Like that to me is just for them to see that, it opens up this massive new world of possibilities. And so my goal and mission is truly to help these moms uncover maybe some trauma. Like, why am I reacting to my child this way? Is it really the child, or is it me? And so when I realized that for myself, like, I was yelling for a little while, I was overreacting, I was putting my anxiety potentially on my children. And then I'm like, shit, how is this going to affect them in the future? How is this going to impact them?
Mhm.
I want sanctuary, calm, chill. But when my childhood and my upbringing was chaos, I was like, shit, I'm familiar to chaos now, but I don't
Mhm.
want that.
Mhm.
So I had to really flip my whole, like, I guess, my habits and everything upside down, and say, what do I truly want? I'm at A, but I need to get to B. How do I get there? Because if things stay the same for me, it's not going to change. Right. So I have to change in order to go after and be this. So with all the, learnings of Tony Robbins and, Dr. Shafali, I'm a certified um, conscious parent and coach. It's a beautiful new way of being, and my girls can be however they can be. I'm just here to guide them and keep them safe. That is truly my only mission. And if I can hold the space and have them know that they can talk to me about anything, we've had some really freaking crazy breakthroughs, Daryl. Like, one proud moment that I just have to share, if you don't mind,
Oh, please.
um, is because of the safe space and because of the placemats that I put together for my dad after he passed. I created mood for thought. So instead of food for thought, it's mood for thought. And there's all these questions around the placemat. So when our girls, we all sit around the table and we ask each other questions, but they're big questions like, what are your values? What's your dream? What are your goals? Who can you forgive today? Who made you laugh? Who did you help today that didn't ask for help? Right? Like all these very, like, I'd say, three-dimensional depth questions versus how
Mhm.
was school today? Like, how was gym? How was math? So for
Right.
me, right, like, it just embodies the values, and it keeps us being those values. So quick story, Scarlett and I chat a lot about love, right? And unconditional love, forgiveness. And when we do that for ourselves, it opens that up for everyone else, right? When we give ourselves grace, then we can give that to others. And hurt people hurt people. So she's 9, she's in 4th grade. There's a lot of bullying happening, I think, in this age. And, and or boys who are maybe into you as a girl, but like their way of into you is like hitting you over the head with a pencil or poking you, or, like just being boys that maybe are kind of into these girls and they have a crush on them, but this is the way they show them at this age. So
Right.
either way, there was a boy at school, and after our conversations in this safe space around the dinner table and how we just talk about, I wonder what they're going through, or I wonder why they're hurting, or right. So a boy comes to her at school, pushes her out of line, and uh she just felt like it wasn't right. So she turned to this boy, I'd love to say his name, but I'm not going to, and says, "Are you okay?" And he was like, "No." And then she goes, "Do you have a dad at home?" And he was like, "No, I actually don't." And she goes, "Wow." She goes, "It's actually kind of sad." And he was
Wow.
like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, I haven't really ever met him, and I don't think he's a really nice person, so it's okay." But then he went off, like he walked off. But for me, for Scarlett to come home to be like, "Mom, like, listen to what happened today." And for her to feel like, to get into her heart and to say, "Wow, I'm being hurt. I wonder what's going on for him." For
Mhm.
her to have that conversation at 9 with this
Mhm.
boy, like, one, it's way impactful for her. Like, I was like, this is amazing. Like, Scarlett, that's so beautiful. And then the boy to have this impact of like, holy crap, I just like pushed this girl out of line, I hurt her, but yet then she turned to me, she turned towards me and asked me if I was okay. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm like, they talk about the ripple effect or like just the impact for him that like a 9-year-old girl would actually care
Yeah.
about to ask. So I just thought that that was so beautiful. You know, there's a lot of, I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not going to be successful. Like momhood's not easy, but that was just one awesome moment where I'm like, shit, when we take the time and we are present and we hear our kids and we're like literally in depth with them at the dinner table, right? The conversations are so amazing. Like that's just so beautiful for all these opportunities of just shared wisdom and not even telling her what to do, but just guiding her and saying, hey, maybe, right? Who knows what's going on for them? Yeah.
Well, you
It's
embodied it. And one of the things that I really respect about what you do and what you're doing, especially in these examples that you've shared, you're allowing not only your children to be children, but acknowledging the fact that they are their own people and persons, and they're
yeah,
also intellectually advanced enough as a human being to
yeah,
understand these bigger concepts of those in-depth conversations. Too many parents, I think, stop our kids from doing higher level stuff because we think they're too young. But
mm,
actually, if you actually start it when they're young, they're actually more intellectually able to understand that. And then they grow into being loving,
amen.
caring people and adults. And you are embodying that by, you know, how's your day? How's your school? No. Who can you impact? Who can you help? Who did you help that? You're giving that
Yes,
three-dimensional question that they're able to then use their thought process to answer,
yes,
and you're not morphing them into another little Courtney. You're letting them be the kids
mm,
that they're going to be. And that's such a beautiful, beautiful
yes,
way to parent.
yes,
I often think that parents they try too hard to make a little clone of themselves instead of realizing that they brought this other entity into the world to be their own entity,
mm,
you know.
that's
And
it. Yep,
I,
hit the
I
nail on that.
admire the fact that you're doing that, and it's going to have that ripple effect throughout because that 9-year-old boy, he may push somebody else again. He may go
Mhm,
through another hard day, but I
mhm.
guarantee you what your daughter did will be a memory he shares way in his older age.
I agree. I
Yeah.
completely agree. It's in the brain, and you're absolutely correct. From a psychological standpoint, like 0 to 10 years old is where our children, where that was our template that we took forward for the rest of our life. So whether we learn after that, I mean, 0 to 10 is crucial. And so
Hmm.
when I put the girls into Tony Robbins and we're all like jumping around and it's crazy, and I know that there's other people that don't agree with that, and I'm like, there was this whole oh my gosh, it was one section of the I think it was Date with Destiny, but the girls came in and it was about your story. And they were like, is this story even correct? And you were like, no, it's total bullshit. And the
Yeah.
girls 7 and 9 are like, it's total bullshit. And I'm like, oh, say it, right? Because
Yeah.
now when the girls are like, hey, Charlie said she hated me, and I'm like, is that true, Scarlett, or is that total bullshit? Right.
Hmm.
So I'm not saying go use these words out like in the
Right.
public, but in
Right.
our safe space, it is total bullshit. That is not, that story is not correct, right? Is that
Yeah.
100% true? So they go back to, and like for the rest of their life, that is going to be so ingrained because it was so intense. And they're like, oh my God, I can say these words. And I'm like, yeah, pattern interrupt, right? Total bullshit. So
Yeah.
I don't know on your podcast,
Well,
but
and the words only hold power if you give them power. Like
right.
my wife is from she was born in the Azores, so she's Portuguese, but was raised in Boston. And as you know from a New Englander,
Yes.
the F word, people say fuck like they say a comma.
Literally.
And I grew up in the streets of Minneapolis, and
Yeah.
then was raised in Iowa in farm country, and farmers swear all the time.
Hmm.
So sometimes not sometimes, I use the word fuck a lot, and I don't use it as a derogatory
No.
information, but it just is like an enhancer a word enhancer that,
Completely.
or a sentence enhancer that has no, bad meaning to it. It's just, the way she and I were, the environment we grew up in. So when it comes out at times and I'm like, oh dang, I hope they're not offended that I said the word fuck. But it wasn't ever meant with that. And it's the same with your family with the word bullshit.
Yeah.
There's a different meaning as to
Mhm.
why you're saying it. You're not just saying the words to be, outrageous. You're asking that deeper level question: is it true or is
Yes.
it false? You know,
Yep.
because the days of gee golly beaver, it's
Oh God.
those word enhancers don't enhance anything anymore.
Nothing.
You know?
Nope.
But when you're doing it with the connotation of is it true or is it false, now your child is thinking, is it
Mm-hmm.
true or is it bullshit?
Mm-hmm.
Because bullshit just means is it false, right?
Correct.
So I think it's and then of course they have to be discerning as to where it's said. But
Correct.
again, that's a growth opportunity to teach our
Yeah.
children, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
So go
remember the
ahead.
girl that was in daycare. She was probably a year old. She was talking. I mean, she started talking at like uh, she was young. And I remember like I picked her up and signed her out, and we're like, oh, by the way, we just want to let you know that she swore today. And I was like, what did she say? And they said, well, she said, oh shit. And I was like, well, that's weird. I'm like, I don't say that. I'm like, I don't think Adam says that. And then we're going home and I'm driving, and I swear to God, like someone had cut me off, and I was like, oh shit. And I was like, oh shit, because I had said, oh shit. I was like, it is me.
It is me.
My God, it was beautiful. I was like, there's one. Oh, it was
That's
so good.
funny because
That was so
there's
good.
a there's a semi joke that is similar to that. They're like, your kids swear to they, and it's like, I don't know how they never leave the house. Where would they pick that up?
Yeah, yeah.
In your house.
Um, so like going back to the F word, if I were to have a podcast, I tell everybody, because right now, like still with my mom and I and our mission into like end generational trauma. So if we can cut that link and create a new one, like what a beautiful legacy, to
Hmm.
to replace with these new patterns. So I always say that my podcast name would be Unfucking the Fuckery.
Yeah, I
Like
love
literally,
it.
because
Yeah,
from New England, you're right. Like the F word is like this more or less enhancer, and it's like this turbocharge of like when I'm passionate, like this
yeah,
just adds more passion. That doesn't
yeah.
mean that I'm mad or like I'm using it in a bad way. It's just it truly does add more color, and it's way more fun. And I think we're happier people when we use that word for some reason.
Well,
It's
they
so much
they
better.
they say the intellectuals swear more than the non, but
Mhm.
I know that we are coming to a hard stop because you have other obligations, and I'm so
Yeah.
thrilled that you took time out of your day
Thank
to come with us. As we progress into 2024, what is in store for Courtney and your world?
Yeah, so the mom circle, constantly, enrolling and bringing people on to join our virtual sanctuary. Every Wednesday night we Zoom 8 to 9:30 from the comfort of your own home. I mean, I think it's really just such a beautiful space that we all can come together. We can talk about chronic or acute challenges. We're supported by, mental licensed mental health counselor. There was a psychologist that came on last week to add more color in another direction. A lot of mental health with children, and yeah, I mean, really, it's for the moms and families, so we can break those generational cycles and be the best versions of ourselves. Give ourselves like kind of move ourselves out of that survival hypervigilant state and put us into this beautiful like joy, calm, blissful, like let's live a life that we truly love, and really embrace every day for what it is here and now. Getting them into that mindful, just supported, grounded space. So that's my mission, and for 2024. In addition to that, we had actually met when I presented, the placemats and like what problem do I solve, and it was, you know, deep connection with the family, deep connection with our children, so we can prevent truly like suicide. Like I want my
Mhm.
kids to be so freaking confident and like supported, right? That they don't ever even have suicidal ideation on their radar. And so those are my placemats, which kind of went on the back burner just because I've been looking for a business grant, or an investor to come in and help me to take them overseas. So it makes more economic sense, because to do them in the States, it just doesn't, it's not working. So those are my two goals for more or less this year, to, try to get these, not to try, but to get these placemats into every household so these families can stay connected from a different aspect, or to have a template, just if they don't know what to ask around the dinner table, it's like, well, here you go, right? And then the kids can choose an intention and a value in the morning at breakfast. Say, hey, mom, I'm going to take on kind today, or I'm going to take on forgiveness or grace or patience. And so literally, like those are conversations every morning and every night. Whether we're in the car, we're driving, Ubering, or, I'm the Uber driver, but I get to drive the girls. I get to have these beautiful conversations and moments of connection. So, just enrolling moms and getting these placemats into every household. And my dream is for them to be on like Oprah's favorite things, right? That will be a thing in the future.
Well, as you continue to put it out in the universe will help you make it happen, especially when
Correct.
you're doing your intentions. So, I'm going to ask you one final question before you
Yes,
go.
please.
What does a warrior spirit mean to Courtney?
Mm. I am a beacon of light. So I have an I am, my identity, and I created it last year. So my I am is, I am a mindful goddess of universal unconditional love, devoted to curiosity and compassion, and awakened to the here and now. That is my I am. So that is my warrior. I'm a warrior of light for those that maybe haven't gotten there yet, but I just want to bring them along and guide them so they can see the light and get out of that darkness, truly.
I love that. Well, I
Thank
appreciate your time today, and it's a beautiful journey that you're on, and much continued success. If there's anything
thank
that I can do, as a fellow coach, if there's any way I can help, just feel free to ask. So,
I
but
will.
I love having you in my space. I love having you, you're watching you grow in your journey, and I just appreciate your time today. So, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Daryl. I know, so nice to finally see you. I appreciate you.
All righty, have a blessed day.
Thank you.